Bob. Sorry. And so we're going to start going through the information. There'll be a question time at the end for you to ask any questions, and we all can do our very best to answer those. This is actually a project that's been in the works for
About 2002, 2003.
2002, 2003. So as Martha was saying, this is the second meeting she's come to, but the last one she was at was 10 years ago. So thank you for coming back again. I'll turn it right over to Pogue so he can get us going with some of the information.
Good morning, I'm Harold Spezio, a member of the fire department, 29 years in the department. I've been on the building committee since we started back in around 2001. We started looking at properties within the village. And in 2003, we settled on a piece of property on Gilbert Street that the membership purchased, and that's what we're here for today. 2018, a little bit about the fire department and what we do. 26 active firefighters. In 2018, we spent 1,109 hours of training inside the department, outside the department, depending on state training or other organizations that provide training. We've spent, that's what our firefighters spent. 3,500, a little over 3,500 hours we spent on active alarms. 100% free from the village. People volunteer 100% of their time for the fire department. So alarms per town. Generally speaking, we answer around an average of about 150 to 200 calls, depending on a given year. With the majority of our calls every year being within the village, and then the other towns that we contract with. We contract with the town of Cambridge, town of White Creek, and the town of Jackson, and a very small portion of the town of Arlington at the end of Ash Grove Road. So you saw the 2018 numbers. 2017 ran a little bit different, but generally speaking, the village we answer the majority of our alarms within the village, and then White Creek is generally the second most, we answer the most alarms, and generally being White Creek and Cambridge and Jackson afterwards. That's a photo or a diagram of what our coverage area is for the Cambridge Fire Department. That's our initial response area. We also run automatic mutual aid with town of White Creek, with the White Creek Fire Department, Buskirk Fire Department, Salem Fire Department, some areas, Shushan Fire Department, and then mutual aid with all the other surrounding. So when I mean automatic mutual aid, when they're called out to a structure fire, motor vehicle accident, we are also dispatched to right along with them. So problems with this building. This building here was built in 1951. All right, the way it sits right now today, we're at about 3,300 square feet. The building was built, you can see the bays were built, originally built. The original building was these front three bays, and they were built for smaller apparatus. The apparatus was generally speaking back in the 50s, 60s, was about 20 feet long. Today's apparatus we're looking at, the longest truck we can put in here is a little over 29-foot truck. That becomes an issue with, generally speaking, the average fire truck in today's building process is about 32 feet. So we have to constrict our apparatus to less than 29.5 feet, which has the engineering cost adds, puts everything, has to compact the truck and so forth. So during the process, since 1951, the building's been added on to a few times, giving us these extra 2 bays in the back, in a kitchen area over in the back that has since been dismantled as far as a kitchen. So you can see from the photos there, you can take a look. Our apparatus is less than 3 or 4. Generally speaking, it's about 2 feet between these 2 pieces of apparatus and the 2 pieces on the east wall. All right. The opposite side of the east wall, on that side, we literally have just enough room to walk down through the building. Very restrictive and constrictive. Years ago, we used to have our gear along these walls in the building, and we had this room behind us as a meeting room. It was also used by the village for the village offices at one point, the village core, and the village used to hold their meetings here. Since the village moved up to North Park Street, they stopped having their meetings here. And one thing, with people getting dressed alongside the trucks, it became a huge safety issue with people getting dressed so close. They were literally leaning against trucks as trucks were moving. And so what we did is we did away with our meeting room. We purchased lockers and moved all of our firefighters into the what used to be our meeting room made that into a gear room. So everybody gets dressed now inside the gear room away from the trucks because of the tight space out here. So the apparatus, like I said, very short here. Outside, the other, with the apron, our apron pulling right out onto Main Street causes some concern also. Multiple times the sidewalk, there's no true sidewalk across the road, but with the sidewalk running along Main Street, pedestrians walking up and down Main Street throughout the day. In the evening, when we're exiting the building, it becomes a safety issue. Multiple times we've had to, start out the building and have to come to a screeching halt because, a kid's shooting by the apron on a bicycle, or, people are walking and not paying attention to, understanding that we have an alarm. Stacking and moving apparatus. In the middle of February, we actually, we're pulling apparatus out of the way. We have to pull this truck out to get our second new engine out for a structure fire. That stays outside. It's time, it's extra apparatus moving, it's apparatus moving around with people trying to load apparatus. It's a safety issue. So with the building where it is, Main Street, obviously it's the busiest street in the village, especially daytime. With the red light intersections of 313, we don't have a lot of sight distance pulling out of here. We have to, maneuver through our busiest intersections on all of our alarms. It's just becomes, increase the safety, increase the risk of our volunteers being on the street. Okay. What we have for property right now, you can see by the yellow design, that's where the building sits. The building sits on this piece, and that's all it's owned by the village. There's no room for expansion. So out back, there's been a generator added to the the station back in the late, around 2007, 2008, we added a generator. Septic tank is out back, along with there's a fuel tank and so forth. Very close to the property lines, and we're not even sure everything is technically on. Like, you see, this line is what we're getting from real property, and our generator is in this area right here. We're not even sure the whole thing is on village property. After responding firefighters to the station, as you came in today, you can see the parking issues. We have no parking lot, we have no parking space. So if there's an event going on around the village, everybody remembers the bike race in the village. Bike race used to start in front of the firehouse every year. We actually would have to move out of this building when a large event came into the village and was on Main Street, because we can't get to the firehouse and we can't get our apparatus out. So we would have to move out for weekends at a time, take our apparatus, take our gear, move into a building that we're unfamiliar with, don't have, everybody doesn't have access to, just to say so we could respond because there was an event going on, on Main Street in the village. You want to speak to these, Steve?
Again, yeah. Recent building problems.
This is Trustee Robertson. He's on the board, so just let you know.
There was a new roof added to this building 2 years ago.
2014, 15, somewhere.
Oh, wow, that's a long one. Okay, so 5-6 years ago. We've had to have asbestos remediation. Mostly came into the meeting room in there. We used to have the asbestos piles down on the floor in there. We had to have those pulled up and removed, and who knows where else the asbestos is in this building. Latest building problems, the pictures you see here are the actual front corner, 2 corners of the building. This is also the front corner of the building here. But what we're having is an undermining of our foundation of this building. The door on that side, that door works, that one doesn't. Because the building is sunk enough where that it's shifted, the building will no longer open. Or the door will no longer open. It's only a matter of time before the building shifts enough where we can't get these doors open. Some of these guys sort of pull out and head to an emergency They won't even be able to get the trucks out of the building. We're looking into having some contractors come and give us quotes on fixing this. We don't even know what that cost is gonna be yet. But this here with the arrow, that's shown, there's actually a hole underneath the front of that foundation and from this foundation. We don't know if it's worn from the state drainage system that runs and goes into the sewer brook. I call it sewer brook. If the pipes are worn and it's actually undermined our foundation, or if it's just poor soil underneath, we're gonna have to do some research to find out. Here, this was the door that you guys came in. It just shows, if you look at the floor when you walk out, the floor is actually dropping. We don't know why, but the floor is actually dropping. It's had to be refilled, but once or twice we put like a filler in there to try and get it back up to level. Over here is the back side of the building. This building's been added on to three times since it was built in 1950. Cinder block foundations. Again, we have settling. We have cracks in the back side of the building. We don't know why. Again, that's going to have to be contractors coming in and figuring out what's going on underneath the building. So those are just some of the structural issues that are going on with the current building that we're in right now. So we may show up one day and not be able to get the trucks out the door, or we might lose some break off the facade while somebody's walking by. We don't know. We're waiting for contractors to come in and quote on that. So go to the next slide.
So with the fire department, so what we've done so far, 2001, 2002, we started looking at properties in the village. We assessed probably 4 or 5 different properties in the village. A lot of them weren't for sale. We were just thinking, is that a good place for a firehouse? Is this not? So we ended up finding this property on 313 Gilbert Street, across from the medical center where the rescue squad is located. The people that owned the property were willing to sell just over, a little over 9, I think it's 9.9, 9.6 acres, whatever the piece is. We agreed on a price, and the membership, the volunteer membership, so the fire department is broke up. You have the fire department that is owned by the village. The membership of the fire department is a not-for-profit organization, so we can also fundraise. With that fundraising, we do donations, we do fundraisers to generate money. There's 5 pieces of apparatus owned by the village. 3.5 pieces of those apparatus have been purchased by the not-for-profit membership and given to the village, along with thousands of dollars of other equipment, Jaws of Life, and a lot of other stuff that we've purchased over the years through fundraising. So, not to underspeak what the village has done for us, to help us to operate, but the rescue truck purchased in 2001 was $184,000, paid for by the not-for-profit membership. The brush truck, we bought the cabin chassis for this truck back in 1997, and the village purchased the body. And the latest project we just did is we took delivery about just over a year ago, a tanker that cost us about $242,000. We hold the note on that, we're making the payments on that, but it's turned over to the village as a piece of apparatus. So that's how the membership in the village is. Technically, it's a fire department owned by the village, but we do fundraising and so forth to help support this. So 2004, we sat down with the people on the village board at that point, and we said, we've purchased this property, we need to look for a new building. This building was too small then, it was too small 10 years before that, and that's why we're here today. We came up with a needs assessment. We went, with the board, we sat down, we interviewed 4 different engineer groups at that time. And between the village board and the fire department committee, members of the village board that sat on the building committee with us, we decided at that point to go with CT MEP. We started designing the building with our needs assessment. We came up with a building that was about just under 16,000 square feet at that time. At that point, 16,000 square feet was probably less than what we're going to spend today for 10,000 because of the price increases. So we went through, we started, the geotechnical surveys, the archaeological stuff that we had to do. We did phase 1 archaeological studies back in the, around 2008. Yep. We did the studies we had to do. We started looking at the building, and the price was what it was. So, 2008, the membership of the fire department decided that, made formal resolution that we would, when the building was decided on, what the footprint of the building, parking lot, so forth would be, that we would turn that land over to the village to make this project happen. So we were at 15,100 square feet, just under 16,000. We looked at grants. There was a lot of grants after 9/11. We started looking, we looked at grants through the years. There's a lot of grants out there for equipment. There was some grants out there at the time to modify buildings. There was nothing for new construction. So we started looking at the building. We took a side trip and went down. Vermont Timber Frames was leaving the building, the old Agrimark building at that point. We went down, we looked at that building. We had a different engineer look at the building with us. At that point it was usable, but it was going to cost, it was with purchasing the building, and there was some structural things that needed to be repaired, and with what we needed to do to get in there, it was going to cost us somewhere around $1.5 million at least to get us in there. We were in the process of thinking, talking, deciding what the cost was going to be, and the building was sold out privately before we were able to decide that. So we started looking at our building. The prices just kept going up through the years. So we sat down and reassessed our needs and said, can we scale back on anything in the building? So we started looking at it. We ended up scaling back to just under 12,000 square feet at that point. At that point, we were at about $2.5 million for 12,000 square feet. Price was still too much. Nobody at the village board didn't think we were in a spot that they could do it at that point. So we really lost some traction. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew how to get to where we needed to be. So 2017, with Mayor Bogle, we sat down in the board, and she's like, we need to figure this out. So we really started, in the last couple of years, putting this project together. We went back and re-looked at our assessment need, knowing that the prices have almost doubled from where they were even in 2012. So we got back a hold of CT Mail, we sat down, and we came up, what can we do to get this down? At 12,000 square feet, we're not going to be able to, we can't afford this, we can't bring this. So we've gotten down to what we're proposing today is just over 10,000 square feet. So the building we sit in is the firehouse. The fire department utilizes village. Chiefs have an office at the village office. We utilize their meeting room every Tuesday night, either for training purposes. We meet on Tuesday nights for training. So all of our classroom training, anything that we need to do in a classroom setting, is generally at the village office. So if we have a state OFBC comes in to do a training session or a class for us, that's where we have to be, because we can't accommodate it in the station. Unless it's a hands-on thing. If it's a classroom setting, we go up there. We also have a storage unit the not-for-profit pays for down below the village at the storage units that we have stuff stored in, and we have a tractor-trailer body at the trailer at the highway garage that we store training aids and some equipment in that we need to get to general. So what we say that this building is 3,300 square feet. This basically houses our turnout gear and our apparatus, but other things that we utilize aren't here. We have to go elsewhere for. So along with getting to where we are today, we did a phase 2 archaeological study, which the state has deemed that we have to go into and do a phase 3 archaeological study, which will be part of the actual digging of the soil when they get ready to do the foundation for the building. So So the membership went ahead with the subdivision. We subdivided the land. The building footprint with parking lots and so forth is the 3.2 acres. Was separated, I think it's 3.2, was separated and subdivided for the building of the project. The fire department will maintain, the not-for-profit will maintain the other 6 acres with a right-of-way. There's a drainage ditch on the southeast side of the property, and we will maintain that right-of-way to the back of the property. And no real, we have ideas, but no real, plans for that property at this point. It may end up staying just farmland, but we have a farmer that uses the land now, and it may just stay farmland. We're no real big plans for that at this point. So the new firehouse, like I said, it's on Gilbert Street, across from the medical center. It's a nice open spot, really good sight distance over there. Responding from there, there's a nice big intersection at 22 and Route 22 and Route 313, good sight distance. Majority of our calls being in the village. Or White Creek, it gives us easy access to head south on 22 for White Creek in a nice intersection. Come back into the village. Being a village department, it's the inevitable of always having to deal with the red light, no matter where we're coming from. But it's still, we still have to deal with that for some calls. All right. We're going to building now, right? Yeah. So I'll let Rich from CT Mail speak as far as the construction and the building process and the things that need to do inside.
My name is Rich Campanola. I'm principal architect with CT Mail Associates. We have quite a bit of experience in what we consider the essential facility niche of the design market, meaning these type of facilities, fire, safety, police, emergency operations centers, which we have done a number of. So with our experience, we are attuned to the needs of what the fire department has, if they had in the past, and where they need to go in the future. My own experience, not only am I an architect, I'm also a code enforcement official with the state, as well as on the state code enforcement disaster assistance response team. My associate, Bob Stewart, not only is he a professional licensed land surveyor, but Bob, your experience in the fire service?
Right now I've got 56 years of active service in the department, past chief, past everything, let me put it that way. Presently I'm chairman of the board of directors of my own fire department, member of International Association of Fire Chiefs, FASNY, state chiefs, any number of organizations trying to stay current on what's going on right now in the fire service. So I've been through a lot of this. I've also been on the building committee for our own fire department, and our own fire department's a little bit bigger than you're proposing. It's 22,400 feet. So it's a large building. So I do have experience as far as the committee is concerned in doing building projects. And I've been with CT Mail now for 46 years.
So our intent is to bring to the village and the department this type of experience, not only ourselves, past chairman of the board was commissioner of his fire district, my designer is the chairman of his own fire district, or commissioner in his own fire district. So it's that type of assistance, looking ahead so we can solve problems up front, knowing what the fire department has now, knowing what they need in the future that we can address in the design. And with that design, what we've come up with, we've done a wide range. As Bob mentioned, you see the Taj Mahals with the very large buildings, as well as the smaller departments of what they need to address, the type of facilities. But these are very specialized facilities in that they need to be designed much different than your home, the businesses in the community, or other facilities because of that term essential facilities, the way the code defines them. And really that definition is that these buildings need to be designed that they are standing and operational in the worst case scenarios when you, the community, are in need of their services. The doors need to be open, they need to resist wind loads, snow loads, even seismic earthquake loads, much greater than other types of facilities. And that needs to be figured into how we organize the space, the selection of the building type, and so forth. As mentioned, we did a lot of due diligence up front. The area, we've done geotech reports, we've done land surveys. The village is involved in looking at the archaeological impacts to the site. utilizing information that has been developed, gone through a secret process, environmental review of the property. As I said, we defined the limits of the work, understanding what the village need to carve out, what is the ideal situation. And then, again, in orienting the property, it's to solve problems and do the due diligence of the design that's needed. As mentioned, you have no way of pulling out safely from this facility. So typical designs, we're pulling back buildings to have a proper apron for pushing the apparatus out before entering the road, as well as being able to bring the apparatus out for routine maintenance and other operational needs. So typically we're back 50 to 60 feet with an apron for the apparatus bay. We're also segregating where responders and others come into the facility. We know we have a future easement with the fire department, but our intent is to separate the apron from responders coming into the site, so we avoid any conflicts with that and how they enter the building and return to the building, both from response and looking at it. The rest of the property, as it's limited, we have to address a number of environmental concerns, obviously. We have to have stormwater management for drainage. We have to have septic fields, separation from other sources, water sources and things like that. We have utilities coming into the site, and I believe Mary mentioned some improvements coming in with the water service that we're planning on, because this building will require additional water service for filling the trucks and things like that, as well as the need for how we're going to handle waste removal. We've got floor drains in the building. Floor drains need to collect not only the returning apparatus that may be wet, but wash down of the vehicle apparatus, so we're dealing with salts and oils and other contaminants which have to be addressed. We can't just discharge that somewhere into the ground, not knowing where it is. So we're going to have to plan for holding tanks for that type of contaminated waste to be able to collect that and handle the situations. So looking at all these aspects, how we've determined how the site can best be used, is there potential for growth in the site? You know, as the apparatus may grow and increase size, we've currently sized it for current plans of apparatus and future purchases, but there may be a need in the future for drive-through apparatus in the event larger pieces. So we want to be able to set up the site that we can plan for those things in the future. And again, we're building and designing a building for a 50-year lifespan. Looking at what needs to be in the building. You've invested an awful lot of money into the fire apparatus. That's what this building is mainly here to start with, housing that investment that the village has made with that apparatus. You can see in this building how much room. Showed you the old picture of what the building was designed for. It was ideal at the time. It fit the apparatus. Plenty of room so you don't end up with pinch areas as you're trying to move apparatus out. 12-foot door today is no longer an acceptable means to avoid that kind of pinch area and safety of your firefighters as they're moving in and out with apparatus moving. Look at the size of the apparatus today and look at the way it's configured. Without the minimum clearances, and these are standards of what needs to be, how far back from a door, how far in between. I've been involved in projects personally where they have caused damage to their facility. You take doors swinging open, or let alone, as you see on this type of apparatus, the type of compartments that get pulled out between them, that they've actually taken out the mullion in these narrow bays between their buildings. Causes major structural damage into that concern. So we got to make sure with clear spans, we don't have columns in the middle of the building, we have clear span structures that allow proper safety operational controls around the entire building, both in front, sides, and doors and compartments open, as well as in back for where the main operations and other things that have to be stored within the building. As you can see, there's no place for storage here. Once this apparatus, the one you see outside, comes back in, there is no room along the side for any of the things they need to store. Hose storage, other equipment storage, gear storage, and things like that that have to go into the building. So we look at all of that when we design that space, and that is the crux of the building and what has to be accommodated. Then is our firefighters. Our concern for our firefighters' safety, not only in the design of the apparatus bay, but how they now need to have the type of operations they deal with. Much different than when this building was designed and the type of calls they responded to. Between vehicle extraction, maybe contamination on scene, things like that. Folks, some of the things that you're dealing with right now.
And we deal with our normal structure fires, along with, and, you know, since I've gotten in the fire department, we've added extrication tools here in the last year. We run probably on the average of about 50 motor vehicle accidents a year. We run Jaws of Life on 2 apparatus now. You know, carbon monoxide, nobody thought of that, you know, 30 years ago. We weren't responding to them. We responded to carbon monoxide alarms. We've become more independent, or as a department, we've had to be trained further on hazardous materials than we did years ago. We have to deal with more as things have changed through the years. We deal with more as a volunteer fire department that never was before. You know, low angle rescue. We have you know, limited training, but you know, somebody gets hurt out in the woods, a hunter falls out of a tree stand. Rescue squad responds, and they're very well, but we respond with them. You know, we help extract people from the woods, you know, help package them and get them out of the woods safely so they can get transported out. We deal with so many more alarms now. It used to be years ago, you know, structure fires, maybe a brush fire, they would maybe go to a car accident. That was primarily the rescue squad's business back in the 60s, 70s, and the rescue squad one. We get called to all that now, and it's, you know, the extra equipment that comes with those alarms that we have to carry. I mean, you know, 30 years ago when we got in, there was no gas meters. We didn't have gas meters. We didn't need them. You know, now we have 3 gas meters. We carry them on all apparatus. We have to monitor the air during a structure fire. You know, our firefighters are wearing self-contained breathing apparatus. We have to monitor the air now before they can take off their SCBAs at a fire, because of what's going on with building construction, the materials we're putting in the buildings, and just stuff like that our job has gotten, for volunteers has gotten, and the standards have gotten so much different that basically we're a volunteer department, so we're held to basically the same standard as a paid fire department that, you know, in Albany, Troy, and the cities around us that hold paid departments, we're held to the same standards.
Like I say, as a designer myself, you can look at what we put in your homes now that is different. The type of materials, the potential for what those off-gas, and the things that the firefighters, your volunteers, may encounter at those sites. A lot of decontamination, though it may happen on the scene, comes back to this station. What do they do with their gear that now has to be decontaminated? What do they do with themselves? This facility has none of those provisions. So all of what we're looking at in the new building design, first of all, their gear. They're not carrying it with them in their cars and trucks and coming to the scene, and there's no way to store it safely around the building to be able to get on your gear. So you got to pull the gear out into a separate area that they can put it on safely and store it. Again, when you're now coming back from a call and they have to decon that gear, what if they have another call? They need a second set of gear that has to be available to them and stored. So when they come back then, we have to have immediate means of coming in and first decontaminating within the facility. That means safety showers, eye washes, a place to take all this equipment and wash it off and decontaminate it. That's a major thing before they enter what we call the habitable area of the building. This is our hot area, our hot zone, that we have to separate from bringing that back home to their families. So we got to make sure that this building design can accommodate that. We need mechanical spaces to support the safety shower, hot water heaters, and things like that, as well as the equipment within the building. Mentioned SCBA. They're breathing air apparatus. Again, back then, you saw those old pictures of the trucks. This guy, remember, jumping on the back of a truck is no longer a possibility. It doesn't exist anymore with modern fire apparatus and essential facility routines and procedures. And of course, then other communications and a way of getting in. So when we leave our hot zone, now we look at the business aspect of the building. What's going to happen? How does the department need to actually function under today's procedures and requirements? They're not going off-site to do half their operations. We need everybody here. So when there's a call, they're here. They're learning on the equipment here. They're being able to decontaminate that equipment here. So we want to be able to accommodate all that. So the first thing we want, and a lot of things, when you mentioned, yeah, back when we started maybe 15,000 square foot. What are we seeing now in the design? How to be able to use these other spaces for multiple purposes, multi-purpose spaces. So this may be, in one case, a training, a meeting room. A way, maybe all these tables and chairs are not set out there. They're laying out the equipment and gear within that room to actually do instruction on how to use it. When they have to have their own business meetings, or even invite the public. I can tell you this situation right here, This space is not designed for you all sitting here as an assembly space. There's not ventilation for it, there's not life safety requirements for it. You're not supposed to be in here. But when the fire department needs to have information out here, you need to have the space. That's what this future has to be designed for. Is it done all the time? You bet it's all done. But this needs to be code compliant. So how do you come in the building? How do you bring the public, when you're bringing your children, you're bringing your families who are not emergency responders, but there's an event going on. How do you segregate those activities within this building? We need to do that. So we're looking at this, the command center, the offices. The chief shouldn't be off-site. Men's and women's toilet rooms. We need now to accommodate accessibility. Existing facilities not accommodate accessibility. Not just for the public, but not every firefighter needs to be able-bodied. So we need to accommodate the movement of spaces, toilet facilities, the meeting areas, approaches to a door, all needs to accommodate those needs. Storage of other items and records that need to be maintained. The main feature in the business area, our command center, our radio room. You're looking at it right in the corner of this building. So when that apparatus is a foot away from it, that's how they're getting their responses. You make the call, they have to get on the radios. That's where it's happening. This is a controlled command center. When a major event or emergency response happens, these are the people who have to control the apron, control into the bays, control firefighter movement, how to make the calls, how to respond to the calls, and then how to make sure that the records of that call are maintained. So the design of the building, as I said, we're now looking, because the cost of construction have honestly skyrocketed from what it is. And what has caused that? That is majorly being caused by the codes. As the codes change, they become more restrictive. Yes, back in 2003, thing I had before, New York State adopted what we call the International Building Code. We didn't even have to worry about earthquakes and seismic. It wasn't in the code. Today it is. So we need to look at that. How we structure the building, how the building is supported, how these spaces are going to function. Also for the types of equipment, types of mechanical, types of electrical systems. Because as I said, we've got to make sure in the design that all these systems function. When you, the public, calls, the lights come on, the doors open, they can get in here, respond, and get out. So all that goes into the design of the facility. As we look at the facility, again, what we look at for materials, for selection, these are firefighters, these are volunteer firefighters. We have to make sure the materials and features we select are low maintenance. We're not looking for a lot of gingerbreading, a lot of trims, require scraping, painting, caulking, a lot of maintenance. They need to concentrate on fire service. So we want to select materials that have long life, low maintenance. A lot of things we select, as we said, this is a 50-year building. We want to make sure that a lot of the materials in here, the paint coating systems, the masonry, any other siding materials, all have that kind of long life. Coatings that, Kynar coatings, the things they put on the skyscrapers, for example, that have long durability, long warranties, and we select those kind of things for what goes in the entire facility. Again, very simple in the design. The most important aspect of that is the height of our apparatus bay. Not only have the heights of the widths increased with door openings, but the heights. You saw in the old pictures, the apparatus had plenty of room below that door. They are now custom ordering apparatus, which costs more money. Not only in length, but their ability to get it in and under the floor. You can see the height clearances here. Typically, in order to maintain this piece of apparatus, you have to lift this cab up. Sure, we can pull it out, we can't here. But we can pull that, so that doesn't happen in plenty of weather. It needs to be maintained or operated. So we want to design an apparatus bay that, even if they need to get on top to do some of the equipment loading and things like that, there's plenty of height within that facility to be able to lift that cab within the building. So if they need to call somebody in that they can't do regular maintenance on it, they can bring somebody here rather than taking that piece off-site and offline. Again, the center of how best to store that equipment that you've invested in. The rest of the building, typical to fit in and typical of the aesthetics of the area. We want to make sure the gable roofs and things like that fit in within the area. As I said, a lot of our design is based upon the changing service dynamics. What was done and ideal for when this building was created is not the same type of response that the fire department is looking at now. changing apparatus, greater training requirements, all those things need to go into the program of what we have to include in the design. The standards, I've got to follow them all. My license, our professional requirements, we make sure that we are serving all their needs that need to be addressed. NFPA for National Fire Protection Association, the codes, New York State Building Codes, the American with Disabilities Act, minimum standards for firefighting and response, OSHA. I've had fire departments, which we are working with, where OSHA, or in case PESH, for public employees, have actually closed portions of fire facilities for not being compliant. New York State Building Codes, again, this is really, especially after the post 9/11 era, where we looked at the essential facilities. I was out on Sandy where we had to respond to major events which affected the community. And where were they housing us? They were housing us in fire stations when we went out to service those communities. So we have to design these to remain operational during those major events. New York is actually adopting the next version of the building code come this May. We are currently under the 2015. We're going to be in the 3-year cycle. Again, every time those codes get adopted, more requirements are added, and especially looking at what we've learned from the past round of codes that have to be incorporated in this. As I mentioned, we're designing what's called essential facilities. And CTMail does a lot of these. They're not only fire stations, police stations, they're the water treatment facilities that service the fire protection needs, the hospitals, the power generating plants. All these are grouped into a section that requires greater snow, wind, and earthquake load designs. And why I keep emphasizing that, what does that mean to us? It means everything that we design has to be selected and chosen for a certain reason because it costs more. Everything we do within the facility. So we got to make sure we're making good judgments and good decisions in how we're assembling this building. Otherwise, you end up with this. And when you're looking at, okay, can we move somewhere else? You're going, none of those buildings were designed for these essential facility requirements. And if your essential facility ends up in this condition, just like the people we have to go and serve, it's not going to serve the purpose. Building codes and standards, not only with the structural design that I have to look at, but it's the way we operate right now. It used to be, we built a firehouse, that's it. Well, today I have to look at it for the firefighter safety and for serving the community. Well, how is that building actually being operated? Yes, it's a vehicle storage area. We've got fuel equipment in here. There's a certain hazard level, life safety aspect here. We may have the business aspect of the building, business loads, things like that. How many people per area, number of exit requirements. We may have a situation where we're actually going to bunk people in here because in an emergency, they may have to stay in here, in the facility, in order a long-term event. Now I have a residential occupancy with sleeping. And sleeping, well, you're not as aware of what's happening while you sleep, so you got to have certain life safety systems to accommodate that. And yes, there may be these assembly occupancies, not just for the public, but for the number of firefighters that may come together, their entire membership. So I've got different fire loads and life safety loads, which affect equipment, ventilation, exit signage, electrical requirements, all those things that we look at within the building design. Obviously, the existing station, as I said, does not meet ADA requirements. Starting from coming in the building, how do you get in here, parking requirements, the toilet room facilities, the approach to a door, all those things need to accommodate not only the public, but others that are not able-bodied. The OSHA regulations, requirements for the self-contained breathing apparatus and cleaning requirements, the clearances around the trucks, basically everything that they need to do to protect your volunteers within the facility. Standards, NFPA, as I said, emergency eye wash stations, how we deal with turnout gear washing. All these are standards that have to go into the design of why this space is configured in a certain way, how much clearances are required, how much extra room is required to accommodate all these regulations in the most economical and most feasible way that we can provide a product within the space limitations. The clearances, again, what you see here, this is a vehicle emissions exhaust system. This gets attached to every truck. Biggest concern in the firefighters right now is the carcinogens that we have to deal with. This is to take the carcinogens for all these diesel fires out of the building. In the old days, you bet, we started up the truck, it went into this ceiling would probably be black by now. So we have to deal with this. Now you can see the encroachment of clearances and these kind of systems that have to be built into the station. In particular case, we have certain things here which we're actually going to try to reuse. So those will be incorporated in the design. But all these systems have to be accommodated within this. And again, the clearances to them and around the equipment. The state, actually the training requirements. I tell you, the training room is one of the big spaces within the building, but there's a requirement for it. You're looking to keep the fire service active, the number of firefighters that you have. A lot of guys are getting old in the business. I hate to point a big part here, but we need to keep new people coming in. But when a new person joins this department, they can't jump on that truck right away and be a firefighter. Well, you've got to go through how much training?
Our basic training, so it's broke down into 2 different sections. Basic training for a member, if they want to be an exterior firefighter, it's about just shy of 100 hours. If they want to include interior firefighting, it's just shy, it's about 180 hours total to join and actually be a functional firefighter on the scene.
So that every new member that we want to get in here to replace the old members and the retiring members has to go through all that. And remember, these are volunteers doing it on their own time. We need the facilities built into here to accommodate that. And training requirements and the standards that are being set nationally and by the state are always increasing, as is the fire service is evolving with new dangers and new threats. Minimum basic training is mentioned if you combine those two, and this applies to the entire membership and continuing. U.S. Fire Administration also has guidelines both for the design of fire and emergency medical services that have to be met for the requirements within the hazards both that they come to on the site as well as those that they bring back to the facility. And then we look at, okay, what else can we do with this building? We've built all these provisions into the design. Well, are we going to be efficient with design? So in a lot of cases, we look at the utility services, we look at the state programs, NYSERDA. We've done a lot of work with energy performance within our building systems that we've designed into. Because again, you've got to remember the way this building is occupied. We've got apparatus bay which has a certain mechanical and load and heating requirement as opposed to occupied areas of the building. So in a lot of buildings in the building system that we selected and that we've done again for this project, most of the building designs that we have done and will be typical of this have been 20 to 30% better in the energy performance on the building envelope as our starting point. We then look at that with other incentives, because again, Coke mentioned there's not much out there for the sticks and bricks of building the building, but there are a lot for the components that go into it. These newer mechanical systems have much greater loads that have to be met. The lighting, you know, what we used to have the incandescent bulbs went to fluorescence, is now going to LEDs and things like that. So there are things that we look at with these agencies and these utilities that we can incorporate into the design for long-term savings. This is a village project. This means it is a public works project. And by public works, that means we have to set up the documents to bid and construct the project under certain requirements that the state has set. That basically means in looking at using public money, we have to make sure, or village will ensure, that we are using those public monies to achieve the maximum quality at the lowest possible cost. Again, public works, the project is most cases in upstate New York. There is a $500,000 limit on public works before you have to say, I just can't hire one contractor to do the whole thing for me. As a public works project, it has to be broken down into a minimum of 4 contracts. So we have to make sure in our design that each aspect of the building components, the general construction, plumbing and gas fitting, heating, ventilating, air conditioning, electrical, are all defined as to what each one of these contracts have to include. I just mentioned, unfortunately, again, in my looking at this and how I have to present budgets and things to the village, that adds cost to the project. Because now we've got to make sure all those components are coordinated in design, but more importantly, they do have to pay the prevailing wage rates. We looked at the site and mentioned its ideal location with the medical center and routes and access to the road. We were able to pull it back from the property. Another major factor is rather than trying to have to work on site of the existing building, we're able to construct a new facility without impacting any of their services here. They will have continual services throughout this construction. Excuse me. We subdivided the property to make sure how much land utilization to accommodate it. And moving forward, subject to voter approval, this week coming of the bond referendum, we will now complete the final design. We're in a schematic phase right now. It's not from the village. We'll obtain a building permit from the municipality. Documents will be issued for public bidding, awarded multiple contracts. Our construction then commences late this year in order to have substantial completion of the project 2021.
Rich, can you answer one more? What are, so the bid process and the pricing scale for the future? When, and I know we're, through October for the present bidding, what you, per square feet, what's the increase you think past that October?
Well, right now, in the budget that we presented to the village, we included price escalation through this period. What we've been seeing in the past, and you can see how the costs have increased, we are actually budgeting 7% right now per year. Is that going to change with current conditions? Possibly, but what we look at is the impacts that we know if we're following this schedule that we can deliver that based upon what we've seen as the trends over the past 10 years of what costs have increased, but they are increasing. There has not been, in the records that we've been keeping all these years, I haven't seen a price increase. I mean, in the years back, before, especially before the code change, we were building these 25,000 square foot buildings at under $200 a square foot. The cost today, with the increases in material costs, labor costs especially, have seen this trend increase that these costs are now well over $300. I've seen buildings, when you're looking at those major masonry, two-story, big structures, $500 to $600 a square foot costs. So in selecting the building system, we've planned for the most economical solution, the solution that can meet the needs, can meet the structural requirements, the code requirements, the life safety requirements, and again, the performance requirements of what this department needs. Thank you very much. It's too long.
All right, my turn when we come to the cost. So yes, this building will cost us $3.7 million. The hope is that though, when we send those bids out, some of those come in a little lower. Also, the fire department has actually been doing quite a bit of fundraising, if you've noticed over the last few months, to help maybe bring that number down. But in the event that we had to fully bond everything for this firehouse, that is the 3.7 price tag, which will be spread over 25 years. That payment a year is $219,000 with the interest. And that is what we're budgeting for. I know when we started these meetings, we were looking at the rate per thousand of what it will cost the taxpayer. When we started in December, it was going to be $1.33 per thousand. But since our budgeting time is upon us and we have the new information as far as what the village's assessment is, that has come down to 75 cents per thousand. So if you own a $100,000 home, you're going to pay $75 more than you did last year just for the firehouse. So that is the breakdown. We all pay at the moment in this past year $13.26 per thousand. It would go up to $14.01 per thousand in order for us to do this. And that is we're trying to keep all other departments and everything else flat. So that's where the spending is. We are at a great time to do this because part of that $219,000 is being offset by the demolition project that happened 5 years ago. I remember 2015, building on the west end, the Ackley building was demoed, and at that time, the project ended up costing us more than we anticipated, which was $500,000. So at that time, you can only bond out 5 years without putting a project to the public if you're going to spend a certain amount of money. So every year we paid $100,000 on the Ackley loan. That money, we just made our last payment in January for the Ackley. So the goal is to roll that $100,000 over to the firehouse project. So that way we're only offsetting and adding into our budget the additional $119,000. So it's a good time to repurpose. And that's capital planning. The village hasn't been known to have a lot of capital planning throughout the years, but that's what you do. You look at what projects in the future are going to be happening, what monies do we have now, what things are going to be paid off, and how can we roll that money into meeting the new needs we have without having to budget a whole new amount of money. And that's what we're doing with this. So yes, you have a question.
So did we raise, I know there's questions out there and there's, I think, misinformation. The village did not raise anybody's assessment to bring that,
No,
that price
I
down.
heard that as well.
It was improvements done within the
Right,
new
right.
structures and.
So we haven't had a reassessment here in the village. All of your properties are still assessed at what they were last year, contingent if you didn't do any major improvements to them. I know the town, both the towns just had county do a reassessment. Your town tax has been reassessed, but not village. That is still the same. The increase in our assessment to get us up to a $72 million total assessed value was due to mostly American Water's improvements of the water main lines. Anytime a public company updates or makes improvements on their equity here in the village, the Public Works Commission reassesses their value and says, okay, you've done these improvements, you now need to pay these municipalities X number of dollars because of those improvements. That was the bulk of it. Apart from a couple new houses that were built on Spring Street, new construction, those were that. But there's been no raise in your personal assessment for your home for this. We can open up to questions now. We're all here to answer.
Okay, I'd like to say that, the ones that we start paying our town taxes, our school taxes, our village taxes, and everything like that, and we're a low income and fixed income village, how are we going to be, I don't say we can't do a firehouse. I like the idea of a firehouse. But, if we have to keep paying our taxes out, you are, as a village, are going to have to support us to pay our taxes.
I have a similar question. That $1.05 assessment that was originally in the flyer they sent out,
Right,
for
that's
my
how it
property,
works.
that's almost $300 a year. And that $300 a year winds up being 10% increase in my taxes.
Well, there's.
So you think
Yeah.
about it's only $1.05, so it's actually 10% of the final total.
Right.
That's a huge assessment for 25 years. I
So
can
your
pay
house is assessed at over
$280,000.
$280,000.
Are you in the village, sir?
I'm outside the village.
So this won't impact you.
It's only village tax.
This won't impact.
White Creek, White Creek, nothing.
Not for the building.
The village contracts with the town?
It's
And
a
it
flat.
makes it even worse, you're dividing it over less people, so these poor people.
And
have to pay
that's
less.
the discussions we've had, and that's what has been talked about is the equity level. We provide service to all the towns. Is the distribution to those towns equitable?
Well, you
Town-
ask the other people outside this town to help pay for our, for this. We cannot
I
do
think
it
that
as a
would be
village.
more reasonable.
That's why we
It
would
was
like
just
to
a small
do,
percentage,
excuse
but
me,
25.
that is why we tried pursuing a fire district in 2014. A fire district would make the whole fire service independent of any municipality, and they would protect everybody. But part of the thing is the towns have to join the fire district.
Well,
And at the time,
Carmen, you got a campaign to get that done.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, higher.
okay.
Kids on the
Yes.
ass and try to not get.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you politely just to calm down. I understand your frustration, but we're all volunteers here. We're
I know you're
trying to look at
volunteers,
you.
and I sympathize with everybody here.
Right.
But, I mean, if I'm going to have to pay taxes, and I can't live in my own home, what, are you going to do?
Well, that's what we're all in. We all know taxes will never go down.
They
We all
are,
know.
and
But what are we
I'm
getting
paying
for the taxes? And that's what we need.
Taxes, and we're not going to be able to support.
That is what we
this
need to
building.
look at. Okay, that's what you need to look at. This money going to this is going for our own protection in our own community. We're
Well,
not
maybe,
saying,
but I mean, if you have.
Could you let me speak?
Money to put into it,
I'm trying to
what are you
answer
going to do?
I'm trying to answer your questions here. We all own properties. All of us on this committee own properties in this village. I look at my taxes. I have 4 children. I see what me and my husband make, and I say, okay, how do we do this? Okay, we look at our expendable income. How many times do I eat out? How much is my cell phone bill a month? I would gladly pay $75 more for a firehouse that's going to save my house. And in fact,
Well, another thing, too, our
$20
school
did
taxes
save
are
my
going up
firehouse.
every year, and we're not.
I
getting
cannot
anything out
control
of that either. So,
that is
I mean,
apart
we've got
from
to
us.
have to be able to
That
pay
is
for this
apart
stuff.
from us. That is apart from us, the school tax.
I don't care, it's not, as a person, our residents, we have to pay those taxes, and if we don't pay them, then we lose our houses.
So here's the thing I want you to think about too. No fire department, or you're not in close proximity to a fire department, or you have a fire department that is decaying and your iOS rating starts going down, your homeowner's insurance will go up. It will skyrocket. Our homeowner's insurance for every one of us that live in the village is based on the proximity to the firehouse, it's based on the building that we own, the number of apparatus, their accessibility to water. That determines how much we pay. Do we want to pay $75 more to have our own firehouse, or am I going to pay $300 more for my insurance next year? Those are the things we have to start thinking about.
Well, you're gonna have to start thinking about other people too.
Well, we are thinking about people on this, and that's okay. I totally respect your opinion and understand where you're coming from.
You don't really understand my opinion.
But at the
because
same
you
time, my duty is to provide fire protection to this community.
And
That is what we have to do.
I agree with fire protection and that sort of thing. The firehouse, I'm perfectly willing to have the firehouse, but I want to be able to pay, be able to live, and not, have to,
I can tell you
on
right now
welfare.
that if somebody brought up the fire district already, I've already heard it mentioned. We've already tried that first off. Secondly, if we decided to say stop today and we're not gonna build this firehouse, it can take an additional 2 years. An additional 2 years to get that put into place, and then it has to go back to referendum again for a vote. So we're looking at 2, maybe 3 years before we can build a firehouse.
I mean, I understand
And
your
as
approach,
Mr.
and I
Campanola
understand
just said,
that.
let me finish what I'm saying. And as Mr. Campanola just said, prices are going up. So we just said $3.7 million for this firehouse. We wait another 2 to 3 years, it's going to be $5 million.
Well, we all know right now, that this firehouse is going in. It's going to be pushed through just like everything else.
You all have a vote say.
That's why it's up for
We're
vote.
putting this is where we're at. We up here cannot change the facts. We're giving you the facts and saying, if we want to do this as a community, this is what it's going to take. It is up to you guys on Wednesday to tell us, what do you want us to do?
Well,
Yes
why should we even
or
be here?
no?
Because we know it's going to pass.
But it only passes if people vote.
Everybody has a vote.
Everybody has a vote in the village limits, in the village. That's the thing. It's all up to you guys. It's in your hands. Assuming it's going to pass, then you can't assume.
A proportion of people are going to say no.
But that's up to everybody going there and letting their voice be heard. We don't control who says yes and who says no.
I
That
know
is
you
all
don't.
up to you. You all have an equal say in this. We're here coming to you, telling you this is what it's going to take. What do you want us to do? And that's where we're at. Yes, no, give us direction. If it's a no, then we have to reassess and pump money into this building to keep it at least standing. And then in the future, well, then it's going to be the next board's problem, and we're looking at $6, $7, $8, $9 million down the road. That's where this goes. If we don't end this and finally decide we're going to do this and make this happen and stop the escalation. You looked at the prices. The building a few years ago was 2.5 million.
Well, when
For
you
more
step
square
up
footage.
at the podium and start, I'm looking for, coming to us and getting it out then. The Agrimark building, could have been yours. But you didn't step up there and cry.
Well, I was not a part of that at that time. This is what went down prior to us. I cannot speak to those. I do not know what happened
And
back in that
was-
time frame.
That was a business decision made by that
That-
landowner. We were
Right.
trying to buy it and he sold it to somebody else.
And that's his right. And that is his
You
right.
can't do that.
You know, that is that person's right to do that. They can sell to whomever they want. That's their choice. We're telling you, this is the information, this is what it's gonna take. What do you want us to do?
I don't want
And
you in
that's-
this building. That's not what I want you to be in this building. That's not what.
But we can't have a new building and not pay for it, and that's where we're at.
But I do not want all the bells and whistles and extra things that.
There's no bells and whistles.
If you've gotta go with basics.
We
And
were,
that's what
I'll tell you right now, that in December, we were looking at a number of $4.2 to $4.3 million, okay? And we sat down with the architect, who, they've been awesome, because we paid them to do a certain amount of work, and we've asked them to do twice as much as we've already paid them for, to cut it down from 4.2 to 4.3, to get rid of the special
3.7.
floors and the special bells and
3.7.
whistles. 3.7. And I saw it in one of the pictures here, they had cupolas up on the top with the weather vanes.
Those are gone.
The bells and whistles were trying to
Well,
cut,
what
we
does
cut them out
Salem
as
have
much
to
as
pay
we
for
could.
their,
We don't know, nobody knows, Salem doesn't know.
They don't know.
They have a rough idea. But that's the thing too is,
And another
once
thing
this
too,
project gets going, like Salem, once Salem committed to building a firehouse, people and companies from the surrounding area stepped up and donated. The lumber yard donated all the lumber at cost, the electrical work. But no one's gonna donate to a project that's not happening. And that is the hope that once we commit to doing this, there will be people who say, you know what, I'm gonna donate X, Y, and Z because it's for us. I'm gonna donate this. You know, the grass seed, you know, a local landscaper. Here's the grass seed, so you don't have to spend $20,000 to grass seed the whole place.
No.
That is what, but we can't put it to a vote praying that we're gonna get donations. We have to put it to the vote of what it would cost us if no donations
Can they
came
do that? It
in.
goes out to bid though?
Huh?
Can they do that? It goes
We
out
can
to bid?
accept donations of goods
And we don't have
and donations of services. Oh, and there's a little caveat because we cannot escape the prevailing wage. So you have a local electrician or somebody who says, I'm gonna donate, I own this company, it's mine, I'm donating my time to come do that panel box for you. He can do that. He cannot donate his employees' time to do that. Same with excavating. You know, we have all these excavators around your machinery, and they say, guess what? We want to come grate your parking lot for you. Don't pay somebody to do that. They can donate that service and do it themselves, but they cannot donate their employees or their other companies' time.
That's what happened in Salem.
And
Salem,
another
not
thing too,
Cambridge.
And that's the hope.
Down by where Mr. Windshield is, was this one place that you looked for, as a place to try to put the firehouse?
In the floodplain?
Mr. Windshield's on a floodplain,
And it's outside the village.
and it's
The
outside.
village has, the village department has to be within the village by law. If we have to go out there, it's a special.
Because,
special-
down
special
there, you
referendum.
would have been open out, out like that and everything, and you could have put a helipad or, the helicopters.
Well, we have
Well, we can do that at this lot too. There's 10 acres, you know.
Yeah, but it isn't open up like it is down there.
But
Still costs
the
$3,000.
lot, where it goes is moot. The building costs what it does, whether it's here, whether it's
No, I
there,
asked,
whether
if
it's
this is a
everywhere.
consideration.
It wasn't because it was outside the village, and the village would have to make special
You're
resolutions
gonna
to
be
move us
helping,
outside.
White Creek, and
Right,
Butler
but-
and that sort of thing.
But as I said earlier, a majority of our alarms is in the village, and we're a village-owned department, so being somewhere in the village is probably the best place.
And we have to think about, so our normal operating yearly budget for the department is $120,000. Now, Town of Jackson, Town of White Creek, and Town of Cambridge all send in money under the contracts. The towns outside of us are covering $105,000 of our budget, which means out of the regular operating budget, The village is only kicking in $15,000 every year. Yes, we have to buy the trucks, yes, we have to pay for the building.
And the
So-
residents have to be the ones that have to fork out the money for that, those, things.
What do I fork out? I fork out taxes, and I can't tell you the number of hours.
That's the way it works.
Like,
If we want services, you have to pay for services. They're not
so
free.
let's start paying. Let's start paying our firefighters. Does anybody know the money that it's going to cost if we pay firefighters? It was in the paper this week. Does anyone know what it exactly said? I think that the village taxpayers and taxpayers overall need to understand what you're getting for the money you're paying.
Would it be over 300,000? If we had a paid fire department?
Yeah. The minimum wage to pay a firefighter in New York State right now, the basic minimum wage is the average. I'm just talking an average, is $28 an hour. That does not include benefits, it does not include longevity, it does not include other staffing, it does not include a retirement program. $28 an hour to pay a firefighter to man 24 hours a day. That's what Vermont's minimum average is right now. That's not the top line.
Well, they put their own buildings up, right?
What's that?
They put their own buildings.
No.
Absolutely not. Become part of the building.
The village pays for the building, too?
Yeah.
The municipality.
We be an employee.
Let me ask you a question. You're a paid firefighter. They interview you to come and work in Cambridge as a paid firefighter to a station similar to this. I won't say this firehouse. Are you going to be able to attract a paid firefighter to work in this fire station? Do you think it's safe? Anyone?
All right, let's get to some other questions here. Wait, let's raise hands before we start talking. Let's have some order here. Yes, sir.
One thing I want to know is, can the village renegotiate the contracts with White Creek, Cambridge?
Absolutely,
Jackson?
absolutely. We did. Actually, the 3-year contract that we're currently in, because we do 3 years, well, with the exception, Jackson has decided to only do yearly contracts with us. So we're year to year. This last contract that we did with the towns for 3 years, it was a 5% increase every year. So over that 3 years, we've increased 15% extra from that, which is probably the largest increase we have asked them for many years. So you can negotiate. So we can negotiate.
When they sell this building, is the proceeds from this going to go onto the bond issue?
Yes.
Not into a fund?
Good question.
and not used for
Yes.
other things, a direct down payment on the bond.
That's a good
Yeah.
question.
Yes.
And the answer,
That $100,000 that you said was rolling over from the Acme building,
That's our
where does that is that
That's
just a
already-
1 year, is that just a 1 year thing?
No, it's every year.
No, it's every
Every
year.
year, so where?
Because that's already in our, so let me explain. So $100,000 is already built in our current budget. Right now, we had the increase from 5 years ago to add it in, which by the way, back 5 years ago was an increase of 5%. And not one person showed up at the meeting for a demo project that we shouldn't have been in, tearing it down, costing us $500,000. It was a 5% increase. I thought everybody was gonna go through the roof when that happened. That was my first year as mayor.
Yeah, the other thing
No
is
one.
those-
But that money is already built into the budget, so we do not have to increase taxes for that $100,000.
Right, but whenever they do these bond issues, once the bond is paid off, your taxes never go back down. You just said that they had that passed, and
Well,
now
our
the
taxes
100,000
would-
is still coming in.
Our taxes would go down if we didn't have anything to put the 100,000 to. Right now, we would have 100 Gs
There's
freed
always
up.
something else to put the money in.
And
So
that's
your
what-
increase is going to continue to be increasing over the 25 years.
called capital.
That's
It's
the
called
problem with
capital
these
planning.
capital
It's
improvements.
you take that money that you've already increased your taxes for 5 years ago. Y'all felt the sting of that 5%
Yeah,
increase
but people
in
don't want
5
to pay an
years.
increase. Once it's done, reduce my taxes.
would love that.
Then they find something else to spend it on.
Because there's other needs. You know,
Other needs
Other
in somebody's
needs.
head, not in the people that are
well, come
actually
to
paying
budget,
the
come
bill.
to budget meetings, and I encourage you, since you don't live in the village, but you're welcome to come to ours, go to the budget meetings of your town. Start looking at the actual expenditures and what it takes to run a municipality.
And there's a lot of waste there. Everyone's
Look-
gonna have a grader.
look
Why
through.
can't they share graders? Leaf collection. Why can't they share leaf collection?
They
We
do.
do share, we
I
don't
know
really share
Cambridge does.
services.
You know how many
And
shared
We do.
services
that's
we have
really
in the
not
county,
fair.
Cambridge,
How many
town,
times
Creek,
don't
the
we do
village?
that? Everything's got shared services.
Well, we can't speak for all those who aren't doing it, but in these municipalities here, our DPWs all work closely together to share services. We're even talking about, is Maddie here, chipper, a joint wood chipper, because the
Ross and Tom White.
Russian, yeah. to go in together, get one that goes back and forth, saves us all.
Exactly.
So-
And there should be more projects like that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So more firehouse related questions. Yes, Evan?
I'm wondering how aggressively you're pursuing donations. We're talking about $3.7 million, and it's wonderful that Argyle Brewery wants to host a little event, but you only raise a couple $100, that's not even much of a $3.7
Oh, how many
million.
fundraisers? do you
So I'll
have?
speak to that. We have an active fundraising group. Melissa Spezio's been doing great with a committee from the department, and we do fundraising. But the issue with that is we have, I said 26 members. We actually, I misspoke, because we've acquired 3 members since this, we put our PowerPoint together. We have 29 members. And 29 members that have a minimum of 30 hours of training every year, and we answered 3,500 hours of calls, and we still have to maintain fundraising on top of that.
I'm not talking about fundraising events.
No, I know, but, the firefighters have to be involved in that.
Yes. No, not letters, capital gifts. And you talk to businesses, and you talk to
So,
homeowners.
Evan, I can,
We've sent our donation, we just did a capital donation letter out to all of our people in our district. All right, that goes to all the businesses also. The trouble is we're a small town. We hit them up, the rescue squad hits them up, all the youth sports hit them up. There's many things that are hitting them, and our people are great. But honestly, the same, we've held 4 or 5 fundraisers, 3 or 4, whatever it's been in the last month. The same people come, and it's just how much can they give? You know, when we get further, if we get, we want to look to politicians. You know, hopefully they'll be able to help us out. They aren't going to help us out, like the mayor said, until we have a shovel-ready project. Until we're ready to put a shovel in the ground, they're not going to commit any money to a building, to an idea, basically. So we're hoping we get ready to break ground and politicians step up and hand us $500,000, $1 million. We don't know what the possibilities are. We're hoping as Salem, as we're breaking ground, people are like, you know what, you guys are building, here's a check for, a few $1,000s, And I think people will do that, but without us being able to, and putting that extra fundraising load on our volunteers are dwindling away throughout the country. Look on the internet, it's not me talking, volunteers across this country are going extinct. First of all, who wants to get up in the middle of the night to answer an alarm for the risk of either dying or acquiring cancer 10 years from now from stuff that you've breathed in? Nobody wants to be a volunteer firefighter anymore. We're lucky. We're one of the only departments in the county that still answer our alarms singly without an automatic mutual aid. Many departments around us get dispatched for a simple fire alarm during the day, and 3 other departments are dispatched with them just to answer the alarm. We're lucky. We have a core group. We have people that are dedicated. But to push more dedication out of them people and more work for something that I said earlier, the money that we put in several $100,000 as a balance is through fundraising, through donations, and we've never questioned because it was bettering the community, making our jobs easier, making our jobs safer. But to put more of that and $1,200 fundraiser is awesome. People are great, and we appreciate every cent that people give us. But that doesn't go far towards the $3.7 million bill. We have talked about addressing, the corporations, the few corporations we do have in the village, Stewart's, Cumberland Farms, Walgreens, and some of the other larger businesses around that we do service. We're probably going to sit down with them and see what they can do. If we could acquire $100,000 acquired and put towards the principal of this bond, will save us $200,000 over the life of the bond, is what the numbers were being told. So if we can come up with, a few $100,000, bring it down $400,000 or $500,000, through the life of the bond, we're going to try to make that happen, between the people of the village and the firefighters. But to say, are we going to raise $3.7 million? Are we going to raise $1 million? It's probably not going to happen. We don't have
you're very right that the fundraisers that we've had, what a great gift that George Van Hook gave us. We expect to get $10,000. That's a nice gift, right? And there's raffle tickets over here if anyone wants them. But you're right. The freezing cold Valentine's night at Argyle, we didn't. It was a small fundraiser. Coffee and pie at Roundhouse was a small fundraiser. The events that we've been doing up until the vote have been more of a public outreach, trying to get the word out, have our face out. And believe me, once the vote goes through, there's plans. I'm not scared to fundraise. I run into burning buildings. I can fundraise, I can talk to politicians. And you know what? And these guys all do a great job behind the scenes and help. And there's community members that have stepped up to help. So,
But we're getting the point. It is our duty to provide and pay for all these things. I am grateful that the fire department has chosen to purchase trucks. They didn't have to. That is our duty to pay for those trucks. That could have already been in the budget 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They could fundraise nothing to put toward the village, but they're choosing to do that because they know and see the needs. They don't have to. And that's what we have to think about. You know, the towns, yes, we can negotiate with the towns and ask them to pay more. But at the end of the day, they have a right to say no because they look out for their people as well. And we have to remember that the highest concentration of people is in this village. 77 calls were villagers, 26 to Jackson. Doesn't give me a lot of room to say, well, here's the facts, you've had X number of calls, you need to send more money. And they look at it and say, well, wait, the population's in the village. Why am I going to supplement your department when they don't do anything other than the few calls there? You know, the supervisors, I've had some conversations with them. They're open to us talking and negotiating. But at the end of the day, we have to act like there were no towns. Because it's still our responsibility to provide fire protection to our residents. Yes?
You had mentioned that the fire insurance would go up, you know, if the standard of the building and the crew and
The iOS rating, yes.
So if this new building goes in, are the insurance rates going to stay steady for a long period of time? And what is that percentage?
I hope it will go down. I hope our
So
residents...
can you voice what we'd be saving by investing in this?
I can't.
That's a question for your insurance company.
Correct.
I reached out.
Yeah, but that's something that if you guys can put a number down and say, all right, out of that 75 cents, you're going to save another nickel. Well, then now it's down to 70 cents.
You could
know?
call your insurance company. I encourage you to say, hey, you know, this is what my department is looking at doing.
But you're the one trying to sell the project. That's your
No, I'm telling you. But I can't predict on your insurance because I don't know the specifics of your house.
Oh,
I can call my
What would be the
insurance.
basic savings? If they're saying that it would go from $75 to $300, I mean, where'd that number come from?
Well, I'm just saying that can happen. If you look at people who live in regions, like when I moved here, well, there was 3 things I looked at. How close am I to the firehouse? How close am I to the police station? How close am I to the rescue squad? Because I've lived in other places where you were set out and separated. And homeowners insurance, it was even hard to get in some locations because they said, you are way out. You are too far from any of the essential services. This is high risk. Your house is going to burn to the ground before they can even make it here based on the mileage. So that number, I was just saying a number, you know, 300, 200, it could be any amount. But encourage you, call and say, hey, based on the iOS rating right now, my rate is this. What's the fluctuation point in iOS rating? If it drops below this, how does that impact my insurance?
Another question is
I mean, for you live outside of town,
they
so.
had to get custom equipment. So what's the savings
Yes.
on that? How much can you?
Absolutely.
Are they saving $50,000 on buying a standard truck off the lot?
I think it's
So,
Honestly, I can say we're,
40, 50.
the issue with apparatus is the same thing with
Yeah, it goes
the
up
bill.
every year.
It goes up every year, and it's hard to
If
say
you could
to
have
buy
bought,
a
instead of
truck.
buying that 29-footer custom, if you just went in and said, give me the standard 32-footer,
So what
then
happens?
an average break on that.
What happens with our apparatus is, I mean, you see this apparatus, to get it into the short stays, you have to build it up to put everything on it that we need, and it's just more engineering costs, where if you just go in and say, because trucks are built, especially today, the engineering, but they're all built modular today. The bodies of apparatus are built modularly. So it depends on, and if you just throw, you know, you want 4 compartments, you want them this width, they throw them on. All right, but we can't do that because we only have the short space, so we have to go up. If we want that extra space, we need to go up. We need to shorten the truck, keep it down.
Well, and then,
To throw a price on that, we bought our last truck. We bought in 2008, roughly $300,000. We try to keep our lead 2 engines, which would be the truck that sits here in this engine, on a 10-year rotation.
that was the next question. What's the rotation?
We're
What's the
close,
lifespan?
we're close to it, we should be into it, but the way the bond happened in 2008, we're actually a little bit over, the bond's getting paid off, I think, this year, I think it got paid off.
I think it just did.
Just got paid off on the new effort,
The one
but
that
to
we
go
looked
by
at.
the same truck we bought in 2008, we're looking at a $450,000 astronomical raise, and nobody can explain really why, but we are not gonna be able to buy a truck for probably less than 400,000, and I can't tell you why, I think it's ridiculous, but that's the world, and when we bought a tanker, a straight cab, two-person tanker last year, $242,000, I mean, and it's basically a water carrier, does have a pump, we can use it if something else is out of service to attack a fire, but basically a water carrier, it's $242,000. You know, it wasn't the cheapest truck on the road, but there's no bells and whistles on that truck, you know.
We can't even make coffee for the guys here after the call because of the fumes in the firehouse. Our coffee pot is filled with we stop at Stewart's now. But, we can't even have a pot of coffee here.
Any other questions? Yes.
You build a new firehouse, what happens in this building? You said you're gonna put it on the market, but
We surplus it out and sell
Yeah.
it, that would be the goal.
it's gonna be sitting like the old Union School or all the other.
I can't
things
project
around there?
that. I know there's been some people who've expressed interest because of historical sentimental reasons. That's totally up to, I can't project that.
Well, look at
The
the
goal is-
hospital, we didn't get rid of that either.
Well, that's not our responsibility.
No, it
That's
isn't, but
privately
I mean, we were talking
Yeah.
about selling things and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, we're
that's
not going to.
That's an elephant on us too.
Right.
What's
Of
the
course, the
cost
asking
of-
price. Yes.
What's the cost of getting them tanks on every year?
What thing?
The tanks that are going.
Oh, the
in and out?
septic.
So one
It's
part
all
of the,
hazardous, right?
so part of the project, when we looked at some other firehouses, and Wilton Fire District has 2 firehouses, and one of their firehouses was actually designed by CP Mail and is very similar, it's 10,000 square building, it was very similar to what we were looking at, so we went over and looked at it. And they already done their tank. So what has to go into the tanker, the floor drains, well, not the floor drains, one floor, so only one bay of the new firehouse would be able to wash apparatus in with soaps and so forth. The soap and so forth can't be put into the regular stuff. So that one bay, and then like our gear washing machine and stuff like that has to go in the tank. Wilton Fire Department was budgeting about $10,000 a year to pump that tank.
That's
Is
Wilton, though.
that in the bond issue? Is that part of the maintenance?
No, that's
That'll be part of
That's
our
above and
operation.
beyond.
That'll be a part of our.
Which if we had wastewater, that problem would have been solved, and that's the problem too, is our community is so far behind the pace in other infrastructure improvements that when you do projects, they cost more. If there was wastewater already here, this would be a huge, what did we say about?
Theoretically, they could,
100,000 less.
theoretically, DEC could come in now and tell us we gotta put wastewater in here. I mean, so whether it's at a new building or here, I mean,
They've only been washing the trucks out here for 50 years.
Right.
Right, and
But
that's-
we can't do
but
that
that's the issue.
anymore
We
in
can
new
pull them
locations.
out, and even in the new building, we can pull them out in the apron, wash them with soap and water, and that's fine. But if we wash them in the building, we have to wash them with that.
Well, I was just
So,
wondering, the cost of it. I mean,
Wilton Firehouse, the Wilton Department answers a lot more alarms than us, so my guess is we probably may only have to pump it once. I can't tell you till we get there, and actually use the station, but if they budget 10, I would say we'd be somewhere between 10 and 0.
Probably with an oil separation device
It goes right into a tank and collect it, and you have to have a wastewater company come and pump it, so that's the real cost.
Yeah, any other questions?
Is it steel structural or wood?
steel.
Steel.
So it's all-
Go with the Morton Creek.
It's a Morton building.
Huh?
With Morton building.
Oh, it is. It's gonna be.
Same as the highway.
Yeah. Same as most of the highway garages.
And
White Creek did the
basically,
Morton.
sheet metal, siding on it, not a.
Primer coated metal siding, pre-engineered new column structure. Interior apparatus bay, again, it's for decontamination and safety like that. FRP liners, simple to wash down, because the vehicle washing in here. And that's part of the thing, I gotta look at everything. It's the electrical is exposed to vehicle washing, we gotta protect all that for the firefighter safety. So every component of it is geared to the process of
It's ISO compliant, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah, stick-built would have cost more, that's why we opted to go.
And the bells and whistles aspect, like you said, sheet metal siding, there was talk about putting a brick facade on the building. We can't afford it, that's just too much money. So we're gonna go with the sheet metal construction. We're gonna cut everywhere we can possibly cut to try and get it down as far as we can.
Yeah, and the material will be certified material.
Right.
Yes.
And I think the mayor can correct me if I'm wrong, so the bond we're voting on Wednesday is for 3.7 billion. We've already, looking at the contracts, and so that's the worst case scenario. As she spoke, there's things in there there's things in there we hope that won't even go into the bids, that we're gonna be able to find people, and I think the number is, don't quote me on it, but I think the number was about $20,000 to strip topsoil just off the property to get their building ready, all right? We may have somebody that can give us a bulldozer and an operator to just strip topsoil that won't go into that thing. There's things, that 3.7 is what the village is gonna build bond, if it's voted on, and we're gonna vote on to get us, that we know the project can happen. But if there's stuff in that bid, and there is stuff in that bid that we feel that we could probably do cheaper, that we can pull out of that bid, our hope is not to even be anywhere near 3.7, to be closer to the 3.4, 3.2, and that's before we get donations, before we talk to politicians. So the proposal is for, that's what it costs to get us there, but if there's stuff in there that we feel that, as a membership, as a community, we can get donations, have people come in and help us bring that down, we're gonna do it. It's like we said, we're all taxpayers too. We don't want it. If we could build this, my frustration being with this project the whole time, in 2008, 2010, we could have had a 12,000 square foot building for $2.3, $2.5 million, we could be 10 years into a bond that almost paid off. And we would have had 2,000 square foot more. That's my frustration. We could already be in this building and have it half paid off. We're not. And the longer we wait, we can see 7% each year. It's not going to get easier for us.
And again, the
And
reason
unfortunately, our departments, and you can look around the area, Greenwich, Salem, Cambridge, the village departments are your core firefighting groups in the area. Not putting any other department down, but rural departments around us, go talk to any other chiefs, any other members. They are completely scrambling to get members. They normally respond to the scene with a driver or two, three people with an apparatus, and then the village departments being Greenwich, Salem, someone, and provide the manpower, the personnel to help fight the fire. And that's just the way it is.
At 6 a.m. this morning, we had 14 guys here. My Saturday morning, 14 guys.
So unfortunately,
I think
the village departments, even though, we provide the service, these 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I think the way the service is going, it's changing dramatically. A lot of places around us are manning, they're taking firefighters from, one firefighter from 4 or 5 different departments, and they're manning a station during the day. So they may, a fire truck in Cambridge today will have 5 personnel on it. They'll answer calls in Salem, Greenwood, Shushan, White Creek, all around. It's not happening in Washington County yet, but areas around us. So they're certain, because they can't get volunteers to answer. So there's one firefighter manning a one truck for, during the day while people are working. And that's the future of the fire service.
Any other questions?
Well, I just want to say that I think we should realize how fortunate we are in this town to have this fire department.
Thank you.
I've since moved back to Cambridge after being gone for 30 years, but I grew up here as a kid, and I was around in the late 60s and 70s when we also had a great fire department here. And the town here has a tradition of having just a great group of people looking over us. And, I realize, I'm a taxpayer now too in town, and I'm leery of paying more taxes, but I also think there's certain things that really are priorities, and in my mind, having a state-of-the-art fire department in our area is something we should be thinking about, and I'm all for it. So
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. So I know we've been focused on these 3 acres. What are you guys thinking about doing with the other 7 acres? Poe had mentioned that a farmer uses that land. Are we renting that land out to the farmer, and are we getting money for that? Or
So-
So we have an arrangement from, he does donate to us, but we don't have a formal arrangement that he gives us money to the department.
But there's no plans to use that as revenue generating property, that land, that 7 acres of.
So right now, we don't have,
I think they.
he doesn't pay us to rent the
They pay
land,
like $55 an acre and it's a good crop for hay. So
we
that's
felt,
not much.
as a membership, let him continue to use the land, help it, cut the land down from growing up, basically. And he still was able to do it. Like I said, he does donate to the department, our not-for-profit, usually, but, it's nothing formal with it. We use it to help keep the property maintained, basically, and he got kind of something.
Gotcha. So Pope said that the $3.7 million is the worst case scenario. What if there's an even worse case scenario, like we enter a huge trade war with China, supplies go up 50, 100, 200%. Who's on the hook for those cost overruns? The village or CT Mail for giving us an inappropriate estimate?
Any standard design contract, as we progress the design, we will be reevaluating the budget at each stage. We're at a schematic stage. When it goes out to bid, I have to have certain contingencies in there to protect those costs at that time. If those bids come in over budget beyond contingencies and alternates, CT Mail will redesign the project.
Are you working on a 30-day estimate?
You have another question, Steve?
Yeah, just one more. So the water company improvements help the village assessment. Will a new firehouse help the village assessment?
Well, it shouldn't because it's not a taxable building. It's a municipally owned structure. I mean, it'll increase the village's assets. So on the books, that will become an asset to the village, will impact our loanable buying power, basically, because our assets will be greater. But no, it won't affect.
This building, if it's bought for privately, though, would come back.
This would come back on the rolls when someone bought it, this property. Yeah. Yes.
Following the financial situation, and my understanding is right now interest rates are plummeting. So I'm thinking if we're going to have to take up some interest, this is the time to do it. It's not going to get any lower unless they start paying us money to take up the loan.
Right. The bank we're probably going to end up working with, because I've been rechecking rates, is 3.3% for the life of the loan.
It's not going to go any lower.
It could by the time now, when we actually sign the paperwork, if this goes through, I mean, it could be. I can't predict that, but
Over the long term,
Yeah.
eventually kind of over.
it's lower than when I first started looking at bonding my numbers back in 2017. Those rates have come down. Yeah. Any other questions?
I got something really quick, Carmen, about the land. This is just a fact information about our property out there. 2018, the village of Cambridge in this area experienced a tornado. I understand that the leader of our state says it wasn't a tornado and stood here and said it wasn't, but I can tell you right now that it was, okay? It was very scary, it was horrifying, it was taken care of. The farmer that utilizes our property lost a huge part of his crop because of that tornado, to feed his cows to produce milk. Our property, having his feed on our land, allowed him to finish out the rest of the cold season and feed his animals for him to survive the end of that season in 2018. He was very, very thankful for having that spot of land in order to keep his farm going and keep producing what he was doing. He was pretty much devastated after the tornado struck this area. So, and I know that's probably not it's just something that doesn't pop up, but there's another benefit of our cooperation with having our property and it still being put to good use.
Any other questions?
Would anyone like a tour? Like to see our kitchen? It's a very nice kitchen.
It's a very short tour.
It's a short tour.
And I want to reiterate, these are the numbers and facts that we're working with. All of us I wish it could cost us less money to do this, but that's not reality, and we're working with reality. And our job was to gather the information together, to put a plan to you guys and let you make the decision. Ultimately, you tell us on Wednesday what you want us to do. Do you want us to move forward with this or not? That is your choice. And then we will go from there. You know, everybody has worked hard for many, many years. This project's been going on many years. And at some point, you have to be the generation that says, all right, are we going to get this done, or are we going to keep kicking this can down the road, down the road, down the road, and wait till we're in a really bad spot? You know, this building right now, we can still use it. You know, we're duct taping and bubble gumming it to keep it together, but we are. I do not want the village to end up in a situation down the road like Greenwich, where their building they had was condemned and they had to turn around and build and bond like that. To me, this way, we've had time to plan, time to look at how can we make this cheaper, time to really take the overall impact of this and really look at it. Emergency situations are never the best time to do anything, and that's what I don't want the village to have to run into down the road. Right now, we're at a place where we control the different factors as best we can. So everybody, I encourage you, please vote on the 18th, let your voice be known, and tell us, what do you guys want us to do? This is your department, this is your village, what would you like us to do on your behalf? So thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thank you for